Welcome to today's presentation brought to you by Adadata and Amazon Web Services. Accelerate onboarding to AWS with data-driven IT discovery automation. And it's my pleasure at this time to introduce today's presenters. Charles Wright is the founder, CEO, and Chief Technology Officer at Adadata since its incorporation in 2012. With more than 10 years in technical leadership roles at IBM and Bluepoint Data, Charles brings his expertise in IT transformation technology, where he has been developing and enhancing automation innovations and redefining IT and cloud transformation. Also with us today is Scott Ward, a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services, AWS. Scott is based out of Seattle, Washington, and is part of a team that supports AWS's global network of technology and consulting partners. And also on our faculty today is Ian Easton. He's an enterprise IT sales executive and the chief commercial officer at Adadata. Easton's primary role includes accountability for managing all sales channels, marketing, and business development, which encompasses branding and commercial strategies for products and partnerships. We have a terrific presentation for you today, and we'll begin today's webinar with Ian Easton.
Thank you, Tim. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Ian Easton, and I have overall responsibility for sales, marketing, and business development here at Adadata. And the purpose of today's call is to connect with organizations that are in the planning stages of considering a move to the AWS platform and are looking for automation solutions to enable that process. So some of the key points we want to leave you with today are, what is discovery automation and why would you consider it? In addition to that, we're going to give you 7 points to look for when evaluating discovery automation. In addition to that, we're going to give you some real-life example of a Delaware North case study where they use the discovery product to onboard to the AWS cloud assisted by the AWS professional services team. That will be delivered by Scott Ward from AWS, and also Charles Wright, the CTO and CEO of Adadata, is going to take you through a demo of the AdaVision Discovery product. The first thing I'd like to do is define the use cases for discovery. Some of the commonly used use cases for an IT discovery are risk identification and remediation planning, disaster recovery planning, legacy hardware and software retirement engagements, also server virtualization and consolidation projects. But the most important use case for today's discussion is cloud migration to AWS. Taking a step back, most AWS enterprise migrations start with some sort of an assessment as led by a global integrator or as delivered by an AWS consulting partner or a service provider. Discoveries feed that assessment. So some of the use cases for feeding an assessment using a discovery is identification of possible legacy apps that maybe should stay on-prem, like maybe Unix applications. It also allows for identification of applications for optimization or possible re-architecture in the AWS family of platforms like RDS, for example. In the case of Delaware North, they use discovery to identify low-hanging fruit or servers that are ideal for lift and land or lift and shift migrations to AWS, and also for building out security groups. So I just covered that discovery can be useful. In the next section, we're going to point out that the traditional discovery methods are challenged and hopefully illustrate the benefits of automation. So the bottom line is, most organizations, IT organizations, don't understand what they have from an infrastructure perspective. CMDB databases are simply not accurate. In addition to that, traditional discovery is a highly manual process where individuals or teams of individuals are interviewing application owners and then reconciling spreadsheets. On top of that, organizations change all the time. Application owners come and go, leadership teams change. Gathering the facts by an interview process is very risky and time-consuming, given that tribal knowledge is often very incomplete. At the end of the day, planning a migration with an incomplete view of the truth leads to possible broken applications and latency issues in the cloud, on top of possible failed migration efforts and a lot of wasted time and money. So I just illustrated what the challenges were to traditional manual discovery processes, but what are the benefits of automation? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but if you take a step back and look at the big picture of one of the biggest advantages of the cloud, especially the AWS platform and its evolved automation, is that evolved automation. If you're seeking the benefits of automation on the AWS platform, why would you not seek the benefit of automating the planning and migration phases as well? The same benefits actually apply here. You want to mitigate human error, you want to rely on hard data, and you want to simplify the journey through automation. So here, hopefully I convinced you the possible benefits of discovery automation, and from there we're going to look at factors what you should consider when assessing discovery technologies on the market. So here in front of you are 7 factors to look for when selecting an automation product for discoveries. Number 1 on this list is there for a reason, and that's security. Top of mind, all the clients we speak to is the security aspect. How is the solution deployed? Where does it live in my environment? What specific methodologies are used to collect data? Where does my data go? Is it off-site? Is it in the cloud? Is it somebody else's cloud? Is it sitting in an appliance? Is there a SaaS peeping into my firewall? These are questions that security teams give us on a weekly basis. Tying into security also is intrusiveness. How lightweight is the solution to deploy? Does it have agents? Are there software prerequisites? Does the technology impact the performance of my source network or my source servers? In addition to that, implementation is always a factor. You want to look for a solution that's rapid to deploy, and you want to get the product deployed quickly and running quickly. And on top of that, how many people are required to support that technology? So implementation is a big factor. The next one is heterogeneous support, and that's a fairly obvious point here. But you want to have broad application support, broad operating system support. You want to be able to deploy your product across Windows, Linux, and Unix platforms, regardless of physical, cloud, or hypervisor environments. Data quality is always important. You want to be able to get accurate data and very quickly. And lastly, I'd like to close with the reporting factor because it's a very important point. How is the reporting delivered? How is it accessed? Do you have access to a console or a technology base where the reporting is live? Can you create your own reports? How is the reporting distributed? Can I export reports from that platform? Do I have access to custom reporting features and functionality? So having said that, I think you have a lot of good questions to look at when evaluating discovery products. So in that last section, we just covered the evaluation points. And from here, we're going to apply these to AdaData's discovery solution, which we call the AdaVision Discovery Module. So big picture, I'd like to say that all of our solutions live in a single console. And AdaVision is just one module in our technology offering. All our products live in a single console, a single pane of glass, if you would. And AdaVision is designed to be used as a standalone offering as well as part of a holistic offering. So all of our products are agentless. We don't deploy any software in source or target environments. Since AdaVision is a source product, we don't obviously deploy any software into that source environment. There are also no software prereqs, so no .NET prereqs, for example. We have no requirements for server reboots. It is very lightweight and fast implementation. It is a Windows 2008 R2 VM that can live anywhere. So the solution can live on-prem behind the client firewall, or can live in the AWS cloud, for example, on EC2 or VPC, and connected to the source environment via VPN or direct connect. We don't use intrusive methodologies to collect data. We don't use port scanning, net flows, or packet interrogation, for example. And we simply credential to the hardware, to the servers that we're discovering, and use native utilities to collect the data we need. So we also provide, on top of basic infrastructure and application inventories, we supply application dependency and affinity maps. So we can provide infrastructure-centric views or application-centric views, and we can include customized and homegrown applications in those views. We also view second and third layer dependencies, and we can also show parent relationships as well for applications. On top of that, we've recently added a custom reporting wizard that Charles is going to detail to you in a few moments, where the professional services team or the client can go into the console and filter on any specific aspect collected and deliver their own reports to distribute to their teams. Another interesting feature that we have is an integrated wave planning functionality. You can see the screenshot to the right. That's a screenshot from the console of the actual wave planning module inside of the console, where we can filter servers by independent, low, or medium, or high affinities and plan for migration waves for AWS migration down the road. So this next slide here is just sort of indicates how we deploy our AdaVision Discovery product. As I mentioned earlier, it is an agentless product, but we do require at a second layer to credential to these servers to access the native utilities on the servers. But the first layer is a non-credentialed initial scan, subnet scan, to identify the host, define the scope of the project. So we'll go out, identify all the IPs on a given subnet, and from there we will get with the customer and decide which of these servers or workloads are within the scope of the collection for migration to AWS. And from here, we credential to the servers on layer 2, and we collect a more comprehensive inventory collection and application inventory collection. And then the next layer is performance data monitoring as well as application affinity and dependency mapping. So I'm going to close out here with the reporting that we deliver to the client teams. Again, we feel that the reporting piece is a crucial aspect of a successful discovery. So as I mentioned before, reporting is accessed live through the console and is available offline in exportable outputs such as CSVs and PDFs. We offer a number of standardized reports that Charles is going to walk you through, and we also give you access to a custom reporting wizard where you can create your own Visios and filter on any collected attribute. In the CSV outputs, we supply all the connection data in a single CSV. We're collecting a lot of data during these collections. On average, for 100 servers per week, you're looking at 4 million data points. So obviously, if you're collecting over thousands of servers, this is a lot of data points to collect over a period of time if you're running the console for weeks or months. So we provide, in addition to the CSV outputs, filtered reporting and visual documents and diagrams to help make the reporting more consumable. As mentioned, we can supply information and an application-centric view, including customer homegrown applications. From here, I'm going to turn this over to Scott. Scott's going to discuss a real-world application of AdaVision on the front end of an AWS migration, and then Charles is going to walk you through a demo.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ian. Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Ward. I'm a solution architect with Amazon Web Services. I'm going to take a few minutes to just talk about Delaware North and their use of the AdaData product and some of the challenges and benefits that they received as a result of using the product. Start out with just a quick intro about Delaware North. They operate as a food, venue, and hotel management company. This year, they're actually celebrating their 100th year as a company, which is a pretty incredible milestone. As I did some research into Delaware North to kind of get myself familiar for this project, I was quite surprised to see how deep they are in the hospitality and service industry. If you've ever done any traveling for work or vacation, there's a good chance you've actually interacted with a venue that's operated by Delaware North, or even a restaurant, or attended an event that's operated by Delaware North. As you can see from the slide, there's actually quite a few well-known venues that are operated by Delaware North throughout the world. They're a worldwide company with 55,000 employees and operating at about $2.6 billion in annual revenue. So let's talk a minute about why Delaware North chose AWS, which is also, in many cases, a lot of the reasons why other companies are choosing AWS. It starts with a no upfront capital expense. So with AWS, you're able to trade your capital expenses for variable expenses. You're no longer having to make upfront purchases for large amounts of infrastructure and having to endure all the other parts that go with that as far as long lead times with vendors, negotiating. waiting for stuff to arrive, having things cabled and racked and stacked, and at the end of the day, it's not even what you need anymore. With AWS, you're able to get what you want when you need it. Low cost. At AWS, we've lowered prices 49 times since 2006. We continue to work to get more operational efficiency out of our services, and we return those efficiencies back to our customers in the form of even lower prices. You only pay for what you use. With AWS, if you're going to launch a compute virtual machine for 2 hours, you only pay for the 2 hours of usage that it's actually running. If you provision 100 gigabytes of storage, you only pay for that 100 gigabytes of storage. You don't pay extra. You don't have to buy more than what you actually need. And when you're done using it, you can return it back and stop paying for it. Security and compliance. This is one of the main reasons that we actually see people choosing AWS. From a security perspective, it's job zero at AWS. We are constantly working to ensure that our customers are operating in a safe and secure environment and that we're providing them the right tools and capabilities to ensure that they're operating at the security level that they need to. On top of that, you add compliance. We have lots of different customers that are operating in different industries that have different compliance requirements. AWS works to obtain certifications for the infrastructure that it operates so that customers can build compliant workloads on top of the infrastructure AWS offers. Self-service. You don't have to call up a customer service rep to have them launch or do anything in your account. Everything that you need to do to configure and launch services or infrastructure you need in AWS can be done through a management console or through command line calls that you completely control. Easily scale up and down. You can change the size of your compute resources to be larger or smaller depending on your needs, or you can add more of them depending on your needs. And you can do these for short periods of time to help you get over periods where you have a larger traffic or a larger demand on your workload, and then shrink back down to the size that you normally consider a steady state, and you only pay for the resources for the amount of time that you actually needed them. Agility and flexibility, the ability to actually go in and get the resources you need when you want them and get different resources for different projects. And the flexibility is there once you've got the resources you need, being able to change the configuration or add more nodes to your cluster or add more storage to what you're ultimately doing. And then going global in minutes. Building a data center is hard, and building a data center in another country is even harder. With AWS, we offer 11 different regions around the world where you can operate your workloads in a way that is most convenient for you for being close to your business or being close to your customers or being able to fulfill a regulatory requirement about being able to operate your workloads in a particular part of the world. So what were some of the challenges that Delaware North had? Well, it started with a mandate from their CIO that involved migrating their virtual server environments from their on-premise data centers to AWS. As they started this project, they began to learn more about their infrastructure that they needed to migrate. They ran into some problems with the approach that they were actually taking. Delaware North, they were actually finding it very difficult to understand and know what was actually going on with their applications and knowing what back-end systems were actually connected to the application. They also couldn't find the right application and service owners to connect them with things like database dependencies, so it was very time-consuming to map everything out. They tried to do an initial discovery using VMware Navigator and VMware vCenter operations. They also tried to do a lot of dependency mapping in a spreadsheet at the end of the day. And they just were not getting the visibility they needed in order to correctly plan out their migration. All these setbacks and challenges were taking the discovery process longer and longer to about a 3 or 4 month time frame, which was making the management and the people responsible and in charge of the project much more uncomfortable and nervous with how things were actually going. So here's a quick overview of the environment that Delaware North was operating in. As we've mentioned before, it consisted of 2 on-premise data centers. It was a VMware environment that covered around 200 virtual and physical servers. And from an operating system, they were using a mix of Windows and Linux operating systems. So what's the solution? So along comes Adadata, and as you can see from this slide, through the use of Adadata product, Delaware North was actually able to very quickly discover their environment after they had struggled so much with their previous efforts. One of the main reasons the Adadata solution was chosen was due to the non-intrusive agentless-based solution that they offered, which Ian also spoke to earlier. So that they didn't have to bother with getting any agent deployed on their instances in order to get a deeper analysis of the servers and the workloads going on with their servers and position them to more be able to start doing work immediately. So what was the outcome of this discovery process that Delaware North did with the Adadata product? Well, it starts with the server count. The customer, they went into this process with an assumed server count of 500 servers. However, that list was out of date, and some of the servers were actually already retired. This just helps solidify the need for being able to get a current view of the network for the Delaware North project. Although through ADADATA, they were actually able to identify and zero in on those 200 servers that were actually relevant for their project. And this was across both development and production workloads. Along the way, they were actually able to identify additional servers that were out of scope, including environments they actually didn't even know still existed, such as some QA environments that had not been torn down after the completion of a previous project. This discovery and identification really helped them to reduce the scope of the work that they needed to perform, as well as ensure that they actually had a full understanding of what was going on for the scope of their project. When it came to actually using the ADADATA product, there were a few initial setup items that needed to be addressed, so that the right firewall rules were opened and then they had the right credentials set up on each of their servers. But once that happened, they were actually able to get the discovery process done in around 3 weeks. The discovery helped with the bulleted items that you see outlined in the detailed report section of the slide. Additionally, it helped with supporting things like network design that was ultimately implemented. Specifically, things like the ability for ADADATA to identify which ports were being used, which helped in planning out the security groups that would be used to create and support the virtual firewalls around the AWS infrastructure that they implemented. So here we have a quote from the Delaware North team, which helps kind of solidify the success that they have with the ADADATA product in order to discover what was going on with their network. On top of this is really a key value point for the Delaware North team was the support that the ADADATA team provided throughout the project, and it really helped this project be a success. The ADADATA had a really strong commitment to helping achieve a successful engagement. It was evidenced by their customer-centric approach to service delivery. Their support team was very commendable, and it really helped set them apart. Time and again, they were able to actually deliver with tight timelines to help keep this project moving along. As a result of being able to identify and scope out the servers for this project, Delaware North were able to do their migration into AWS, and they've been able to close down one of their data centers, and they've actually been able to move the remainder of their infrastructure into a smaller data center. On top of this, they're also currently evaluating the feasibility of moving more of their workloads into AWS. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Charles Wright, who's going to talk you through the AdaVision Discovery Automation product.
Thanks, Scott. This is Charles Wright. As Ian and Scott mentioned, I'm the CEO and CTO of the AdaData Corporation. The great thing about what we're talking about today is has been mentioned previously, is the value of automation. So I'm going to walk you through what the actual automation process looks like from the end user and the system admin perspective. And you can see how easy it is to access the data points, gather the data, and really put together some solid wave planning, solid analysis of the infrastructure, and really enable you to onboard yourself into the AWS environment in a much easier fashion. So as we get started here, as you can see, the application itself is web-based, so it's very easy on the eyes and easy to manage. And you, as soon as you start to log into the environment, you'll see that you're immediately, on the front dashboard, you're immediately introduced to the console and how to immediately start to probe the environment and gather all the data points necessary for a successful transformation. So once you log in and, of course, install the product, there is no data points, obviously. This is a fresh install. And we're going to walk you through, how we gather the data points and how they are relevant to transformation. So right here, as I mentioned, is a new install, no data. But at the end of the process, this will be populated. So as of right now, this is our initial subnet scan. So we're creating subnet scans, which is the first step in the collection. This will automatically start to populate every node on the environment, whether it's a Windows server, Linux server, Unix server, router, so forth. And then that's immediately exported into a manageable CSV output. So once that CSV output is created, that gives you the insight that we were discussing to every node on the subnets. So once we identify all the nodes, then at that point we take it a step further and begin to create a universal credential or put in the credential provided by the client, and then we apply it to the CSV. So in this case, we're going to go back to the central console, and once we get to there, we create the new job. We will go in there and actually go to the manage credential function. And this will allow us to, once again, create the credential that will to enable us to bulk credential to all these servers at once. So that's one of the advantages of automation. So we're going to create this profile, and once this profile is created, and we're going to create one for Windows, one for Linux in this case, we're going to allow you to authenticate en masse to your own infrastructure. That cuts down on hours and hours of individual manual collection right there. So within hours, you literally have all the infrastructure details of the entire environment, which is a huge undertaking when you're considering a manual process. So in my past experience in working in transformation projects, it's usually, between 8 and 10 individuals crawling the environment with spreadsheets and interviewing and taking tons of hours away from your technology team. What you're able to do is really drop the technology in the environment with as little as one person and discover thousands and thousands of servers in their environment. In this case, we're just going to populate just the name of the credential. That's a true critical point here. We're not putting passwords and clear text in any type of environment. This is simply the credential name that we created. And then right now, we're going to upload this entire subnet scan into the console. So once again, in the previous step, we just put the credential in, and many times the customer puts the credential in. We do not even know the password to the environment, but that does not prohibit us from, once again, doing a mass collection and enabling the client. So at this point, you'll see the credentials process has begun. And then now you'll see that it's the current status of discovery initiated. We're doing a mass authentication, mass data collection through every server in the environment that's currently in scope. And that's a critical component there. So, and you can see how immediately, we're refreshing it. You can see what the status is as it continues to go. And as you can see at the time left in the scan, you can actually, time yourself on how long you want this to continue. So at this point, the process has been completed. And now we're going to go pick up some servers off our current list of servers that we've already collected. And then we're going to compare them side by side. So here's some Linux machines, here's some Windows machines. And so we can show you the kind of depth and what the reporting looks like from each server. So right now, once again, we're going to pull an online report. So actually, we're going to get the data report points here, and we're going to download these reports locally into the system. But you do have the option, as you can see there, to view the data online, but also we can make it consumable for download. And so you can see here the job status is currently queued, and the console interacts with you very well in that way. So it doesn't take, a lengthy training to really get up to speed on the functionality, because literally it's a scan, it's a credential scan, and then reporting. So it's very, very easy to navigate and really enable professional services to be effective. So right here, as you can see in the report, we already have the host name, we have the IP address, we know what port was being used, what remote host was being contacted, what program was being used, what was the count of the amount of connections, what application was being used, what path to the application. So most people fail to realize in complex heterogeneous environments, you have a lot of homegrown applications that are using Java EXE, for example. Well, that Java EXE is really not definitive on what kind of application you're running. It's an Java app, but what Java app? I'm running millions of them. So in this case, by drilling down to the path of the application, we're able to tell you exactly what application is actually being used and allow you to be effective in planning your migration and transformation and consolidation to AWS. So that's critical. That's very critical. So like I said, this is the raw data points, and this will allow you to, really get down in the weeds. And not only that, if you can see here, it tells you what port is being used. That was critical in the AWS transformation for Delaware North, because their environment was very complex, went into a virtual private cloud, and they had to build security groups. This was critical. This allowed them to really understand how the data path was really working and how they needed to configure their security groups, which is high-level architecture. When you're really getting into the DevOps scenarios and being effective, those details are extremely important. So that was one of the ways we enabled Delaware North and the AWS professional services team in that regard. So as I mentioned, this is a raw data points in a CSV output. We also have multitudes of other different outputs, and right now we're going to show what the inventory report looks like. So the inventory report, once again talks about the important things on each server. What operating system? What's the name? Where is it registered? How much memory is being allocated? Is it a physical? Is it a virtual? Those are all critical data points, because how do you scale, how you build future state if you don't know what you currently have infrastructure-wise? So that's very important. Also, what packages are installed? What applications are installed? Are they compatible? Can they run in the cloud? All of that is informational. What account security groups? What groups are created on the system? How can we duplicate that for future state? So whether you're going to migrate in a lift and shift fashion, or if you're going to build out a new infrastructure from scratch, those things are critical, right? Because you need to be able to understand what you currently have in your environment. Here's a Windows server as well that was identified. It's blurred out for confidentiality's sake, as you can see, but Windows 2003 in this case, you can see all the data points, IP address, subnet mask, disk sizes. Once again, how do you plan for future state if you don't know where you currently are? So this is all very critical information. So the infrastructure is one of the key components of our collection, right? It's not the only thing, but it's very important. So what does Vision provide you with? Infrastructure details. It provides you with, the performance details, and we're going to touch on that right now. So in addition to looking at the infrastructure details, now we can tell you how your current server infrastructure is performing in its current state. So this is twofold. It allows you to scale out the future state, but it also allows you to set a baseline on how you're performing now and how impact of the AWS transformation really is making in your environment, right? So you're going to be able to leverage the scalability, the efficiency, the infrastructure of AWS, the powerful infrastructure of AWS, and now you'll be able to see how your workload is performing from current environment to your future state environment. So those are some critical points. And here's memory as well. Those are critical components when you're looking at sizing, not just from an infrastructure perspective, but also from future state. And this is another server looking at its process, how is it working, when is it peaked, how many times does it reach maximum load, what is the average load. All those data points, as I mentioned, are critical. Right now, when you're looking at our pre-migration checklist, so what does this look like? This is a side-by-side server. What type of server? Physical, virtual, when the system booted last. All those are important because you want to know the healthy state of your environment. If it's been 2-3 years since your server rebooted, it may be something you want to consider before doing any type of migration activities. What system model? In this case, we're identifying some hardware. What are we going to do? Are we going to virtualize it? Are we going to migrate it? Are we going to rebuild? All of these dates, right? OS versions. Is this version supported? This is Red Hat 4, Red Hat 6, Windows 2003. So this is really all important data that you can sit down with the customer and really understand what you have. And this is, like I said, a side-by-side view. And then how do you want to scale for future? What are your cores, your current cores? How much CPU? What do you want to do for future state? Right here, these are all the application stack. What's your current application stack looking like? What is your disk subsystems looking like? What is your storage requirements? All of these things, when you're looking at utilizing and and maximizing your AWS advantage, what do you want to do for your disk? Are you going to put some in Glacier? Are you going to EC2? There's a lot of options here. This is how you really define and really enable your customer to really maximize that advantage. So these reports, as I mentioned, these are, readily available, downloadable, available online in the technology, very easy to get to, right? You just hit the reports tab and hit, select your servers and you're off, right? Your data points are there. So here's another interesting thing. So, and Anya mentioned this earlier, how do we make this consumable? A lot of folks, the spreadsheet look is very, technical, and you know, folks like to get down in the trenches. But a lot of times, at a high level, how do these applications look? How do they interact? How do I build move plans? How do I present this to our end customer? Well, you know, Visio is a very powerful tool, but you really need to understand the data points to really go to produce those reports. What the Vision product has done is really simplified that. So now you're able to generate these reports in a snap, in a second. So this is not a time-consuming, 20 hours, 30 hours straight overnight of Visio production. This is actually done for you. So in this case, we're looking at a server dependency view. This is just infrastructure. How are these servers communicating? Look at it right here. You hit the server dependency view, and voila, there you have it. You are looking at an architecture diagram that has been just produced for you. So you have visuals that are consumable for the application owners, C-level executives, folks that really want to really have a visual representation of what my environment looks like. And even still, we give you the opportunity to drag, drop, create, and build the images according to how your style or, you know, the way you normally produce these documents. So it's very flexible in that format. And so this was just an infrastructure view. As I mentioned, you can export it. You can also create move groups, and we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. So here's the other view. This is the application view. And this is, this is really the meat and potatoes of what transformation really is. I think what's really been a conversation is a popular term is the application as a network. So what we really have done is providing an application-centric view of your infrastructure. So when you're doing transformation, everyone is saying, I'm moving apps. You're not moving infrastructure. Well, here you are for everyone to see all the middleware, all the applications right here for you. You can just select them, and immediately you're looking at building out, visualization of your application in your environment. So these are all the applications we collected, and so all the data points we've acquired, and now look how easy it is. You select the application, and voila, once again, you will obviously see the visualization of this application in the environment simply by picking on the view application dependency, and then the image is right there for you. So the nights of, building the infrastructure, building out these plans, building out these complex diagrams that take, that may be inaccurate. Well, this is 100% truth, right? So that's the beauty of automation. We've eliminated human error, but we've also facilitated massive scale and proficiency because all of this is done in hours versus days and weeks and months. And that's a huge give back to your customer. So let's look at this. Let's look a little further. If you notice on the left-hand side, now you see red. What red signifies is we're taking this a little bit deeper. And let me pull back here again. We're taking this a little bit deeper. We're going to map the third-level application flow. So we're going to continue to dig deeper into the infrastructure. So we're going to check that box again, hit view dependency, and then you'll see some red. So now we've gone not just the first level, not just the second level, but another stage of how this application is actually trickling into the environment and cascading so that, the application. So if you look at here, we picked the blue server as an example. I'll go back to it 1 second more. We picked the blue server as an example. And that blue server, in this case, once we map it, is not the initiating communication. That blue server is actually in progress being talked to prior to by beginning of the application. So by going to that third level, we've realized that server is really getting input into that conversation. Now here's one of the highlights, I think, of our technology. One of the enhancements. What we discussed with our customers is that they loved our wave plans. They loved our affinity maps. But they always came back to us and said, can you add this report? We love this report. We love this about your product, but we want to add this functionality. But how do we get this report? And then, of course, they would have to open a ticket. We would create it for them. We've now introduced our custom report view, allows the customer to create the reports they want on demand. That is very powerful because every engagement is a snowflake. Every application is a snowflake. So you're essentially allowing and empowering your professional services team to really drill down into the client environment and really dig out the important aspects of this transformation, this planning, and possibly uncover some loopholes or some mines in the field, because these custom reports allow you to pull off any single attribute you were collecting. So you can see here as you scroll through, CPU count, every little attribute, every port, every memory, every little aspect of this environment is searchable, collectible, and presentable in a format that's consumable. So this is extremely powerful. We're really excited about this feature that we're going to really push to our customers and really enable them to really maximize efficiency and transform to AWS. So as you can look here, we run this query, we hit next, and once again, there's more operations here that you can actually select from. It's very detailed. And once we produce this report, we have the ability, as you can see on the left-hand side, to save this. So once your team starts to develop and really understand the power behind the IDaVision product, they really can start enabling and sharing it with other teams, whatever reporting that they feel are effective. And then, of course, this really transforms your practice and it really enables this type of activity to transform into the environment. And this is something you can export this query. As I mentioned, save it. And, of course, it'll start building out. As you can see here, these are some of the outputs. These are the servers that met that criteria. And then they were able to nail down and drill down into these servers and really get an understanding of what may be some problematic workloads during the transformation effort. So this is real powerful. Just like to reiterate that and the importance. And as I touched on, this is how simple it is to save this and make this report a repeatable report that you want to keep in your holster and your so that you can enable your team to continue to produce things that you think are critical to your efforts. So, all right, so as we go through here, you can see here we're back on the main screen, and there it is, all the data points that we discussed, all the data points we collected, the AWS module has summarized. So you got a pretty good view. In addition to what you already know, it's right in front of you. So it's real candid, and you can see what servers may have be oversubscribed, undersubscribed, what the application usage is, what network activity trending. Just a really highly usable dashboard that allows you to get a snapshot of what your transformation potentially roadmap looks like in the obstacles in front of you. So here's the other capability we touched on in move plans. So once we've identified all the servers, we've identified all the assets, how do we move them? How do you build out a strategy? Well, we give you an opportunity, and we haven't touched on the second part of our technology. We're focusing more on the Vision product today, but it allows you to build move plans that allow you to effectively migrate with our Motion product. So Motion is our migration technology that is integrated with our Vision product, but it's sold separately as an add-on module. So right here, if you look here, right here, the group name is created. You can move massive amounts of servers at one time, depending on your capabilities and bandwidth. And right there, the total asset is a very important piece. So it tells you how big this group is, what do you need to scale for in the target environment to support this, how much compute do you need to get, and that all enables you in your planning effort. So if you do not emphasize, if you do not use the migration Motion product, just really focus on Vision today, or have other means of migrating, whether through lift and shift or even DevOps, at least in this case, you'll understand moving this compute, this is how much you need to provision, this is how much you need to anticipate for your future state based on your current specifications and current capabilities. So to me, this is also, very a very intuitive view and very easy to really enable your team to be successful. And right here you can see you can save the group, and then you can automatically migrate the group if you have the Add Motion module with the Vision product. As of this time, I think this is the end of the video for me. I think if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I think I'm going to turn this all over to Scott, and Scott will talk a little bit more about AWS and how enlighten us on some of the services available. Scott?
Excellent. Thank you very much, Charles. Yeah, what I'm going to do here for a few minutes is just kind of walk everybody through a few of the key AWS services that you would see a company like Delaware North or even yourself when you're looking at a discovery moving to AWS possibly use. Starts with Amazon EC2. So these are our virtual servers in the cloud. This is your core compute workload or resource that you'll be using to run a lot of your jobs. It's resizable, so you can choose a mix of compute and memory that you initially need, and if that needs to change over time, either up or down, you can resize that compute EC2 instance to be at a different configuration that you ultimately need. You get complete control of your computing resources, meaning once you launch an EC2 instance, which is your compute node, you get to full control of the operating system. You have all the root access. You get to control the keys, what users can log in, what users can't. You get to choose from a Windows or many different Linux operating systems. You get to choose the software you want to install. You get to choose how you want to harden the operating system. You control the patching of the operating system. It's all within your control. We talked earlier about the ability to get a variable expense and the ability to quickly launch resources. This EC2 reduces the time that it takes to actually boot a new server and get it to a matter of minutes, as opposed to waiting the weeks or months that it might take to order a new server with traditional on-premise infrastructure. There's 30 plus different instance types to choose from, whether it be a general purpose, compute intensive, memory intensive, graphics processing intensive, or even read-write intensive needs. There's lots of different instance types out there to actually help you. It scales as your requirements change. You can make a EC2 compute resource larger or smaller, or you can add additional EC2 resources to spread the load out amongst those many resources to accomplish what you're trying to do. As we mentioned before, it's pay for what you use. AWS charges with an hourly billing rate, so you only get paid by the charged by the hour for the resources that you're actually using within EC2. Here's a quick overview of some of the broad compute types we talked about earlier, whether it be the general purpose, compute optimized. We mentioned the I/O or storage optimized, graphics processing if you have some scientific or gaming workloads, and memory optimized for something that's a little memory intensive, such as a database. Next, the Amazon VPC. This is your isolated network resources in the AWS cloud. It's a completely private address space. You define the IP address space that you want to operate in. And at that point, you have full control of your networking environment within AWS. You can define additional subnets within your virtual private cloud. You can determine if those subnets are private or public, public meaning they have access to the internet. You get to control routing tables that determine how traffic moves around your environment. You get to control routing rules or access control lists to determine what traffic's allowed in, what traffic's allowed out. You get to control what we call security groups, which are virtual firewalls around your EC2 instances to determine what traffic can go in and what traffic can go out. You can even take your virtual private cloud, you can connect it with an on-premise data center if you're doing something such as a migration. You actually have a VPN secure connection between your AWS network resources and your on-premise network resources. You can even also link additional virtual private clouds together within AWS to have more of a complete, full network communication picture. Here's the overview of some of the security controls that exist within a virtual private cloud. It starts at the bottom with your VPN gateway or your internet gateway, allowing public internet access in, or your VPN gateway for private communications. Then goes into the VPC router, which consists of routing tables and network access control lists, which are governing where traffic should go, and then if traffic is allowed in and out. We then have different subnets that we've defined within our overall IP address space. We then have security groups that are surrounding each of the EC2 instances that are determining whether traffic is allowed in or out of each of those EC2 instances. Then finally, when you talk about migrating onto AWS, there's often a need to run in a hybrid configuration where you might have connection between your on-premise resources and the AWS cloud. We already talked about the VPN connectivity option, but at times there's a need to have a larger, more consistent, dedicated network and more higher and predictable throughput into the AWS cloud. So that's where Direct Connect comes in, giving you that dedicated network connection. You establish a network connection from a AWS partnered co-location facility into a particular AWS region. And at that point, you either run your workload in the co-location facility or you integrate further to make a fiber connection between your data center and the co-location facility so that you have an overall connection at a very high speed into the AWS region. From a high volume data transfer perspective, using Direct Connect can reduce your overall costs for those data transfers because it has cheaper data transfer rates, gives you consistent network performance. You can lay a VPN on top of Direct Connect to have an encrypted transmission, and you can have various speeds that you can provision from a Direct Connect perspective from 50 megabytes per second all the way to 10 gigabytes per second for each of your connections. And then here's just a quick example of Direct Connect. You've got your corporate data center, your users doing work in there. You've got the Direct Connect connection, bridging that gap between your corporate data center and the AWS region, which is allowing you to get to resources that are operating in your virtual private cloud within AWS. Okay, and at this point, I'm going to hand it off for the next steps in our webinar.
And with that, let's open things up for question. With the time remaining, we will address your questions verbally. If you have a question or a comment, click on the chat tab on the left side of your screen, type your question in the box below, and click send. Only our presenters will see your question, and as I mentioned, we'll address these verbally as time permits. And a reminder that if we are unable to get to everyone's questions, the presenters have agreed to compile them and send a follow-up email to everybody attending today's webinar with their responses. So again, if you have a question, type it into the chat tab on the left side of the screen. With that, let me turn things over to Ian Easton to start looking at some of those questions.
Thanks a lot, Tim. We've got a few questions that have popped up here, and it looks like these are good candidates, technical questions for Charles. So, Charles, first question is, how long does the AdaVision product need to be deployed in a client environment for a collection?
Well, we recommend that in most enterprise environments, at least 30 to 45 days to capture monthly batch jobs or, any intermittent processing to capture a full picture. But we've run the discoveries as short as 3 to 5 days, depending on the urgency of the client and their current knowledge of their current infrastructure. So it varies per engagement, but, we recommend the more data points are better when you're dealing in these types of transformation activities.
Okay, thanks for that. And then I have another question here about affinity groups, Charles. Can the product give us mapping views of application versus server centric?
Yes, during the video, I think we walked through that a little bit, but yes, just to follow up, we do have two separate types of views: infrastructure view, where it tells you how the server is communicating, and then app-centric views, which will give you details on how the application is cascading in the environment.
Thank you. And then we have one final technical question here, Charles, for you. And the question is, can the product be used for discovery of an environment for Unix servers as well as x86? Correct.
So in this particular scope of the Delaware North transformation, they were an x86 shop predominantly. But in other use cases, we have discovered both Solaris AIX, HPUX, as well as all flavors of Linux and Windows for application mapping and wave planning.
Thank you, Charles. And Tim, I believe that wraps up our technical questions if there's no more coming in.
Okay, I don't see any left. We do have a few moments left, however. If somebody does have a quick question, type it into the chat tab on the left side of your screen. And while we wait for that, perhaps any closing thoughts or comments, any takeaway points from today's presentation?
Okay, Tim, this is Ian. I'll take that. We do want to thank all the registrants for signing up and joining us today, and we know your time is valuable. Thanks for the technical questions. We really want to give a special thanks to Scott Ward and the whole AWS partner network team that has been very supportive throughout this engagement, as well as the AWS ProServe team on site at Delaware North, as well as Delaware North. And if anyone is interested in linking up with a reseller or becoming a reseller, they can contact me directly. Again, I am Ian at adadata.com. That's IAN at adadata.com. And we wish that if you don't contact us directly, you would come by our booth at the reInvent event next week. Charles and I will be there, and we are booth 346. Please come by and say hello. And that's all the points I had, Tim. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. And with that, we have no other questions, so I do thank our audience for joining us today. That concludes today's webinar, Accelerate Onboarding to AWS with Data-Driven IT Discovery Automation, brought to you by Adadata, with support from Amazon Web Services, and presented by Charles Wright and Ian Easton, along with Scott Ward. Now, in a moment, your computer will be redirected to an online evaluation for this program. We ask that you please take a few moments to share your thoughts with us. Today's program is copyrighted in 2015 by Adadata LLC, all rights reserved.